I'm gonna be honest, I think I've never hated a book so much as I hate this one. Hi, my name is Moana, and this is my dog Spike. And I am a reading and writing lover who disliked English class as both a student and a teacher, and I am now documenting my journey of rediscovering my love for words. Originally for this video, I was going to give just a simple review of the novel Thanksgiving by Janet Evanovich. But as I was reading and thinking about it, my thoughts started to morph into something unexpected. So today, we are going to talk about non-consent in this rom-com book. I was on the lookout for a fun, easy read for Thanksgiving, so when I read the reviews for this book, I thought that it would be perfect. It had reviews like 4 out of 5 stars, perfect if you want a lighthearted, silly, romantic holiday treat. The main characters are an endearing couple. Ivanovich is a master of humorous sexual tension. Sure, it's rather unrealistic, but so what? It's fun reading. Or 5 out of 5 stars. This is a wonderful rom-com. I love the characters and need a sequel. This book is so good and it's a quick read. I couldn't put it down because I wanted to know what happens next. Janet is a great author and she never disappoints. But this review was the one that really got me thinking. 3 out of 5 stars. Completely unbelievable from start to finish and a little silly at times. If you can suspend your disbelief and if you like humor, you might like this one too. Written in 1988, so some of the interactions between Megan and Patrick are pretty outdated, but it was a quick, lighthearted read. Okay, so can somebody tell me, since when was non-consent considered romantic and lighthearted? To start off with a little bit of background, Janet Evanovich is a New York Times best-selling novelist who has had a very successful career with 75 books written and translated into over 40 different languages. I often see her novels in paperback form on the shelves of drugstores, big box stores, and airport book stands, which shows how popular and prevalent that she is. So I thought that I might be missing out on something really great since I hadn't read any of her novels until now. I was really excited to read Thanksgiving because when the reviews called it a rom-com, I thought of some of my favorite 90s romance movies such as You've Got Mail and Notting Hill and Runaway Bride. All of these which were just cute and made me feel good. The story opens up with Megan, the main female character who is dressed up in 18th century colonial clothing in the historical town of Colonial Williamsburg. It's the holiday season and the town is recreating what it was like to live there in the 1700s with horse-drawn carriages and shops where colonial artisans and cooks sell their wares. As Megan is sitting on a bench and is eating cookies and enjoying some hot apple cider, a rabbit emerges out of nowhere and starts chewing a hole into her skirt. She angrily jumps up and the owner of the rabbit emerges, and it just so happens that he is a very handsome young newcomer to the village. And we can clearly envision the first encounter of this enemies to lovers couple as clearly as almost any Hallmark holiday movie. Megan is upset that the rabbit chewed her skirt, but Patrick, the rabbit's owner, finds it hilarious and makes a joke that she's trying to steal him and she's also feeding him her skirt, both of which she should be ashamed of doing. At this point, we're only a few pages in, but I found Patrick so annoying and cringy that I already wanted to stop reading and DNF this novel. The only reason why I forced myself to continue was because I paid my hard-earned money on purchasing the audiobook version of it, and I didn't want that to go to waste, so I read on. When Megan and Patrick part ways, Patrick fantasizes about Megan, and to quote from the book, he thought, "There was nothing average about the freckles that marched across her straight little nose and dusted her rosy cheeks. And there was nothing average about her mouth. It was soft and pink and full. He'd almost kissed her." Now, this might seem like the innocent thoughts of a man meeting a woman for the first time that he finds attractive, but it became significantly annoying to me because the story continues with Patrick's rabbit getting loose in the town again, and Megan finding it and returning it back to him at his home. Megan learns that Patrick is a pediatrician who just moved in, and as she's giving him back his rabbit, one of his patients unexpectedly shows up at the door carrying her baby, saying that she urgently needs to go away for 2 weeks and can't take the child with her. She mistakenly thinks that Megan is Patrick's wife and says that she trusts him since he's been a great doctor to her. So she says that she'll be back for her son in 2 weeks and leaves immediately before they have a chance to say anything. Megan is shocked and is about to leave to continue on with her daily life as usual, but Patrick manages to manipulate her into staying and helping him take care of Timmy, the baby. Taking cues from his patient's mistake, Patrick jokes and calls Megan Mrs. Hunter, which would be her name if they really were married, and then he tweaks her nose and leaves, which Megan finds annoying and exasperating. In another later instance, Patrick calls her Mrs. Hunter again and kisses her goodbye despite her protests that she doesn't like the unwanted shows of affection. When she tells him that she hates it, the author explains his thoughts by writing, "Pat looked down at her." In all honesty, he wasn't that happy about tweaking her on the nose or kissing her on top of the head either, but he was just about foaming at the mouth to kiss her on her wherever. She'd been too sleepy and too distracted to belt her robe, and in the course of her travels about the house, it had parted, exposing a tantalizing corridor of smooth skin and slinky nightgown. He had been making a supreme effort not to stare. He was afraid if he got a really good look, he might start drooling, and he knew she hated drool. The author continued on. He studied her face, unsure of the emotions he found there. She was lovely. Already she was tying him in knots, yet he didn't have a clue about her feelings for him. He suspected they might not be flattering. His gaze strayed to the low neckline of her pale yellow nightgown. Oh hell, he thought, sliding his hands along her neck. It would be worth a broken nose to get a good morning kiss. So right after she told him that she didn't like him kissing her, he goes and does exactly that again. I had hoped that she would punch him in the nose, but instead, she falls into a dreamy euphoria as he trails kisses down her body and she gives herself up to him. She eventually does snap out of it and pushes him back, but her explanation for why she is stopping him is that they shouldn't do that in front of the baby, which Patrick just finds funny. Throughout the story, we see this constant pattern of Patrick forcing himself onto Megan and her getting angry, but with her also not forcefully stopping him, since she's also fighting with her own body's physical responses to him. So I guess some people would argue that because she's conflicted, Patrick is responding to the side of her that does want him. I don't know if this is just because I'm reading this book in 2024 and the Me Too movement has made me more aware and sensitive to the struggles of unwanted sexual advances, but I really felt uncomfortable with all of this in the story and had a difficult time seeing it as a romantic comedy. In a 2008 article for the London Independent, reporter Jane Jakeman praised Evanovich and wrote, "Her work within the romance novel genre helped her learn to create likable characters and attractive leading men. In this time, Evanovich also became known for the humor that filled her novels. She believes that it's very important to take a comic approach. If we can laugh at something, we can face it." I had a really difficult time seeing Patrick as an attractive and likable leading man. To me, it's not funny to tell a guy that you don't want to be kissed by him, and then he just does it anyway. Thankfully, his forceful advances don't go so far as to actually R-word Megan. Can I say the actual word here on YouTube? I'm still a new booktuber, so somebody let me know what words I can and cannot use here. But at one point, he does touch her in this area, even though she was still telling him that she didn't like his advances on her. So in the foreword of this book, Evanovich gives some background on this story and writes, "In a previous life before the time of Plum, I wrote 12 short romance novels, red-hot screwball comedies, each and every one of them." Screwball comedy is a subgenre of film that became popular during the Great Depression. According to the website scenecollege.net, in general, they are light-hearted, frothy, often sophisticated romance stories, commonly focusing on a battle of the sexes in which both co-protagonists try to outwit or outmaneuver each other. In the book, The Screwball Comedy Films by Dwayne Burge and Robert Milton Miller, they explain its central romance was frequently instigated by an aggressive, even eccentric woman whose efforts to prod her more stodgy and conventional beau along the rocky road to the altar primed the comic mechanisms for a great deal of humor by embarrassment. Improbable events, mistaken identities, and ominously misleading circumstantial evidence quickly compounded upon each other, albeit by seemingly logical progression, until a frantic conclusion in which even the impending marriage gives only faint promise of providing some whit of order as antidote to the previous narrative chaos. So now, I don't want to give away too much of the story in case you haven't read it yet, but something unexpected does happen in Thanksgiving, which leads to Megan experiencing a strange moment of insanity, and she schemes to make Patrick marry her. With that, the story takes a turn and it makes it seem like Megan is the character with issues and Patrick is the practical, level-headed one in spite of his forced sexual advances on her earlier. So why does all this matter? I know that most people will say that this book was written just to entertain and it's not a big deal and it's not that deep. However, going back to the reviews that I shared earlier in this video, it seems that many people agree that this story was lighthearted, funny, and romantic, which led me to question, can it really be funny and romantic when one person forces unwanted advances on another? I did a deep dive into this and found that a romantic pursuit involves actively trying to develop a romantic relationship with someone, while harassment is a pattern of unwanted and intrusive behavior that makes someone feel uncomfortable or threatened, even if the intention is romantic, and often includes ignoring clear boundaries or signs of disinterest. The key difference lies in respecting the other person's boundaries in response to advances. In this novel, we continuously see Patrick ignoring the boundaries that Megan tries to set when she tells him that she doesn't like him touching her. At first, his advances are purely physical because he doesn't yet know her, but he's extremely physically attracted to her. There's even a point where he decides to go up to her room without being invited because he thinks that she is trying to seduce him and get him into bed, but she's just too shy to say so. As they do get to know each other, he falls in love with her, and in his mind, his unwanted advances are acceptable because they are based on love and his emotions. At no point does he ever stop and think that she said no, and to force myself on her is actually wrong because it's harassment. Later in the story, when she seems to go crazy and tries to force marriage on him, it's written in a way where it's like the female equivalent to him forcing himself physically onto her. I don't know if that's what the author was thinking, either consciously or subconsciously, but that's what it felt like as I read it. I would think that if this story were to take place in real life and a man were to force a kiss on a woman, she would shove him away and avoid having any contact with him ever again. Since this is a story and it's supposed to be a fun escape as a romantic comedy, I guess that's why it seems to be acceptable. Personally, though, I found it neither romantic nor funny, and if it were to happen to me in real life, I might see it more as a nightmare. This is the only book that I've read so far from Janet Evanovich, but each of her books are very popular, so I assume that many people must have read Thanksgiving. If you're an adult and you know how to think critically, then I don't really have any issues with you reading this story. However, in addition to the explicit sexual content of the story, I would not be okay with impressionable young people reading it. Recently, there has been a lot of discussion online about the dangers of book talk due to the way that it sometimes popularizes books that depict unhealthy relationships as romantic or hot. Even though this book is not as bad as many of the popular ones right now, I do think that books like this one can negatively impact impressionable readers to think that these problematic behaviors are okay or even normal. You would not believe how many times teachers had to explain to students the differences between romantically pursuing your crush versus harassing them, and that no means no, and not no means you need to be more forceful and aggressive. This is based on my experience as a middle school teacher. So I know that this book was written for adults rather than for children and teenagers though, so by no means am I saying that this book shouldn't exist. Books like this are best read by mature people with the critical thinking skills to be able to understand that it's not reality and should not be used as a reference of what romance should look like in real life. There are so many more things that I could say about this to develop these ideas even further, but I'm going to table that for a future video since I'm sure that this is not the last time that I will be talking about the negative impacts that a book can have on readers. So in closing, would I recommend Thanksgiving by Janet Evanovich? Probably not. If you're looking for a nice holiday story to warm your heart this Thanksgiving, then this story would not be it. If you're looking for a story to overthink and overanalyze about unhealthy relationships, then this is it. I want to hear from you. What is your favorite rom-com book and why? Let me know in the comments. For my next video, I will be reading and analyzing a fantasy novel, Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Su Lin Tan. I recently started getting into Asian fantasy novels, so I'm super excited to read that one. Thank you so much for joining me for this video, and if you enjoyed it, make sure you hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to see more of my book reviews. I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and I will see you soon. Bye! Bye, kisses. Happy Thanksgiving. Yay!